Well, aloha. You can do a little aloha. Much better, much better. Welcome to the second annual SSA Policy Forum. You know, last year we presented this forum for the first time, kind of as an experiment to fill in a gap that we were seeing in the dialogue on SSA. The response was overwhelmingly in favor of us doing it again based on your evaluation. So here we are, and it is so great to see all of you. I want to offer special thanks to the Space Foundation, Analytical Graphics, Secure World Foundation, all of whom who worked with us very, very closely to pull this together again this year. AGI, in fact, is today's luncheon sponsor, so thank you very, very much for that support. The result of our collaboration, you will see, is a program intended to engage the SSA community across a broad range of topics and stakeholders. We again spotlight the important aspects of implementing space situational awareness, including policy, collaboration, commercial, and civil contributions. We are all, I'm sure, keenly aware of the climate, the push-pull going on in the U.S. Congress today about policy and about dollars. Policy is the rationale for why we fund what we fund, why our countries fund or not fund actions. Policies set budgets. With the restrictions and or challenges that we are all facing, the dialogue is more necessary than ever to come to a consensus on policy and on dollars for space situational awareness. We offer this forum to all of you to give us the opportunity to have the exchanges, to have the discussions on tough questions, the dialogue about SSA in a productive, positive environment. It is in this spirit that we offer and welcome you all to the conversation and look forward to where this conversation leads. We will be publishing a full report of the proceedings today to serve as a stepping stone and building block to hopefully future solutions and strategies. So we really hope that you find your time with us today totally worthwhile and valuable. Now I'd like to turn the program over to Elliot Pullum, who is Chief Executive Officer of the Space Foundation. And Elliot, I'm not sure you realize, but it's been 10 years since we came together with you, and it's been a great relationship. And you don't look much older. It's wonderful. So please help me welcome Elliot Pullum.
How is that possible, 10 years? Wow. It's been a great partnership. Those of you who work with the Space Foundation know that we're all about partnerships. You know, if you're going to punch above your weight class, you have to have good partners. And I'm so happy that so many of them are here in the room today for this second annual SSA Policy Forum. Let me start by saying aloha, aloha kakahiaka, aloha kako. Welcome to the SSA Forum. This is a forum here at AMOS that has always attracted some really, really good, really important, and very, very good-looking space professionals, all to be in one room. And you can tell you're at the AMOS conference when there are at least 4 other people in the room that are wearing the same aloha shirt that you're wearing. So, Jeannie, well done, well planned. Well, we're delighted to co-host this forum once again. There is a great agenda for you today, some really highly regarded speakers that know this stuff, that will bring you and share with you a view from the top. And boy, it just doesn't seem to be enough to say thank you to MEDB for this forum, given that this is also the occasion of our 10th anniversary working together. So, Jeannie, Sandy, Lay, all the wonderful folks at MEDB, thank you for everything you do. Today's program is going to feature 3 panel sessions. We'll cover the space situational awareness current state of affairs. We'll take a look at international SSA activities and collaboration. And we're going to take a look at commercial, civil, and research and development roles in space situational awareness. And we are delighted to have an AMOS repeat offender, Eric Stallmer, here with us to be our master moderator, forum moderator today. And I want to thank Eric for stepping up to the plate. I want to thank Paul for letting Eric come out to do this, and thank all of the organizations that have worked to organize these sessions, and our speakers, some of them had easy and early travels, and some of them who had to get out and push the airplane, Doug, but we're glad you made it anyway. We are really committed at the Space Foundation to gatherings like this. We believe very, very strongly in the power of conferences and the power of meetings like this to share ideas, to improve our minds, to educate ourselves on the state of the art. I know we're in a really strange and heavily politicized environment around meetings these days. It's a very tough environment. I'll talk about that a little bit in my remarks tomorrow. But I just want to salute again our friends at MEDB for never wavering, for staying the course and doing what they had to do to put on another great AMOS conference. We are all so delighted to be here. It's my privilege to introduce your first speaker this morning, and it is a privilege. This is a lady I've had the opportunity to work with for several years now as a member of my board of directors. Wanda Austin is president and CEO of the Aerospace Corporation, and that means that she leads one of the leading architects for the nation's national security space programs. There are nearly 4,000 employees at Aerospace Corporation. The biography says that they have revenues of more than $850 million, although I know that Wanda is currently in negotiations for the next 5 years, and it'll be really interesting to see how she does with that. Go Wanda, go Wanda, go Wanda. I'm not going to read her lengthy list of achievements. You have that in your program books, and most of you have studied her career because she is a role model for all of us. Tremendous background in the industry, tremendous educational background. I would like to highlight some of her awards because those speak volumes about the kind of work she does. She is a holder of the National Intelligence Medallion for Meritorious Service, the Air Force Scroll of Achievement, the National Reconnaissance Office Gold Medal, the winner of the 2012 Von Braun Award, as well as the 2012 Horatio Alger Award. What most impresses me about Wanda is that as hard as she works and as much as she has on her plate, she never forgets the importance of education. She and her team have a fierce, fierce commitment to STEM education. As you know, this is something that's near and dear to the Space Foundation's heart. We are delighted to have our education team here on Maui with us this week, once again working with all the middle schoolers and putting on programs here at AMOS for teachers and students. And you'll see those bright-eyed kids here running around campus, and I know lots of you have plans to interact with them. Aerospace Corporation really has a tremendous STEM education program as well, and really has been a leader in trying to build and bring the next generation of space scientists and space technologists and space leaders into our industry. So would you please join me in a warm Maui welcome for Wanda Austin.
Well, good morning. I'm sorry, I forgot where I was. Aloha. There we go. Now we're talking to each other. Well, I am really delighted to be here, and I want to thank Elliot for the very warm and complimentary introduction this morning. But I also want to thank Jeannie and the Space Foundation and Kirk Lewis for their hard work in putting together this forum on a very, very critical topic. So I know that you all are going to hear from some very knowledgeable speakers over the course of the entire conference, but I also know that there's going to be some great dialogue that goes on over the Mai Tais, overlooking the pool and watching the sunset. And, you know, you don't apologize for that. Some of the best thinking happens when people actually get a chance to get together and relax and just talk without the tyranny of the urgent. So my thanks to all of you, and you know, Kirk, if is nothing else, he's persistent. And so for a few years, he calls and says, you know, you need to get to AMOS. And I said, you're right, I need to get to AMOS, but not this year. And so I'm really glad that it worked out that we were able to do that. So it's really an honor and privilege for me to provide a keynote address today at the second annual SSA Policy Forum, because I think that we're at a critical juncture in this mission area in terms of what we need to do going forward. And I suspect that many of you understand the difference between being committed and being involved. If you use the bacon and egg breakfast as an example, right, the chicken is involved, but the pig is really committed, right? So this is something that is a similar thing for those of us in our business who are concerned and involved in global space situational awareness challenges and capabilities. My message this morning is to point out that all of us in spacefaring and space benefiting nations are committed to excellence in SSA because our way of life depends on stability in space and preservation of the space environment. To make the case, I want to focus on 3 points today. I want to talk a little bit about the value of SSA, the importance of making sure that our actions with regard to SSA are consistent with our policy intentions, and to share with you some examples of a body of work that aerospace is involved in to improve our ability to understand the space environment so that we can make appropriate actions to preserve it. So let's think about the value of SSA. The problem we face today is that most people really know that they are dependent on space. At least certainly everyone here understands that we're dependent on space. I'm not sure how much the average citizen knows, but certainly Congress understands that our national priorities, like shifting our attention to the vast area of the Pacific, are largely enabled by space systems. I suspect that everyone here also understands the vulnerability and believes in the need for improved space situational awareness. You know how important it is to no kidding know what are the space objects, where are the space objects, what is their status, and has it changed since the last time it was observed? But not everyone understands the problem the way we do, and not everyone agrees with the need for ensuring the resources needed to address this problem are made available, especially when this problem is stacked up against other national needs or when examined from the perspective of other nations or from the perspective of commercial interests. Space is now the domain of many nations, and barriers to space access are significantly reduced. When we started in the space business, there were 2 nations that could actually put things in space and have them perform the expected functions. When I got in this business, there were maybe, 3 or 4 that could stand up and say they had some capability. Today, there are 12 nations with the capability to deliver satellites to space and about 60 who have their own capability and national assets. So it comes as no surprise then that the number of spacecraft in operation and the amount of space debris is increasing rapidly, and it will continue to do so. Therefore, protecting the nation's space assets is becoming more and more difficult, and avoiding inadvertent conjunctions is more challenging. Let me spend a few minutes talking about why it is important to build support for what needs to be done and to continue to work for better solutions. So how do we increase the awareness about the benefits of space situational awareness and about the effects of not doing better SSA? I think the first thing we have to do is increase awareness of the problem among non-experts. This may seem counterintuitive, but I believe this would be time well spent. I recognize that it won't be easy to do because the space environment is very foreign to most, and many just don't understand the capabilities or the constraints in space. It's still not uncommon to hear, I'm sad to say, that you'll be in a group of people and they'll say, well, gee, we don't really need GPS anymore, do we? Or the Weather Channel, we can just turn on the news and get everything that we need to know. And this is even from people who really ought to know better. These are some of our leaders. So I think one thing we need to do is to help people recognize when they are relying on space. Much like your laptop or smartphone or soon-to-be smartwatch, You may not know the brand of the processor you're using, but you expect the device to work 24/7. It was really eye-opening when situational awareness was introduced into wargaming, specifically space situational awareness, as it helped us to realize just how dynamic this environment can be. If people realize that losing GPS has broader implications than losing the GPS system in your car, there would be a deeper understanding of the problem. When Dr. Larry Gershwin, the ODNI NIM, National Intelligence Manager for Space, briefed the National Intelligence Estimate last year, it increased awareness of our dependence on space systems, and it increased awareness on our vulnerability. In fact, any scenario you can imagine in which we lose space assets will not only affect our warfighters, but it will affect everyone. Future conflicts will likely have cyber and space implications that involve complex interactions across the whole of government. They will not be simply military-on-military engagements. These engagements will also affect our commercial and industry partners, affecting all of our economic, environmental, and social interactions. Finding a way to give people a deeper appreciation of this problem is a challenge that we need to undertake if we're to build support for what we know we need to do here. This is the key to getting and sustaining a space policy that values the product of the space situational awareness capabilities. Making our actions consistent with our policies is really key. Once people have that appreciation, we can introduce the next important idea, which is that in order to achieve the goals reflected in the U.S. space policy of acting responsibly in space and providing transparency to improve public awareness and the responsible use of space, we must consistently take the actions required to achieve the goals. This includes establishing global relationships, developing tools and techniques, and architecting future systems that contribute positively to operating safely in space. In this sense, what we have to do represents a big technical challenge that relates directly to policies that we can implement. We need to convey the idea that new thinking and innovation are possible in this area, that this will lead to affordable and effective solutions, and that this leads in turn to effective policies on how to respond to problems and collaborate and cooperate with others. The technical challenges and policy challenges are linked because our space systems operate in an international domain in which there are commercial interests and national interests. Working effectively in this domain requires that we have a spectrum of options available to deal with everything from the occasional irresponsible party who litters space with debris to options for handling the more serious interference. Now, as General Shelton has said in this very forum, ultimately we have to be able to attribute actions. Certainly, anyone who operates space systems, whether a commercial company or a military agency, wants to know what or who caused an interference event so that appropriate actions can be taken. However, attribution is completely dependent on the quantity of the information available and the confidence that we have in it. Clearly, if an event in space is caused by a solar storm or a piece of debris hitting your solar panel, you'd like to know that before looking for some other cause. And this isn't easy to discern. On the other hand, if there is something that can be addressed through cooperation and policy, you want to focus on it and quickly so that you understand thoroughly what needs to be done. So if that isn't tough enough, let's make things tougher. Things happen fast in this realm, and so what you really want is predictive information if you can get it. As you all know, we're working steadily toward having a comprehensive and reliable picture of what is happening in space that would routinely give us actionable information of the kind I've just mentioned. But unfortunately, we are not there yet. Take the case of the Russian laser-ranging spacecraft that experienced the problems described in the March 8th edition of Space News. We only knew about this problem after it occurred, and it took us time to determine exactly what had happened. Certainly, a laser-ranging spacecraft is one of the most cooperative spacecraft imaginable from the point of view of checking its orbital trajectory. After scouring the space catalog, it was determined that the Russian spacecraft might have been hit by a piece of space debris from a nearby satellite. This was all widely reported in the news, in the open press. However, after much analysis, we at the Aerospace Corporation are not so sure about what really happened. There could be other explanations. After examining the data and extracting every bit of meaning we could from the physics of the situation, we suspect one alternative explanation could be that a different piece of untracked debris, for example, might have been the cause. Now, I only bring this up to illustrate how far we are from gathering timely information about the cause of space events and creating actionable steps in response. I realize that there are plans in place to address this kind of problem, including the new JMS and the efforts in the area of space fence. But my point here is that effective space policy needs to be based on a solid technological foundation that provides actionable information. The information that we have to develop is more than just location and speed, of course. According to General Shelton, there are 4 principal elements associated with space situational awareness. The most actionable kind of information is predictive threat warning with an assessment of the nature of the threat. But this is built upon a picture that's created by fusing data from different sources, and that is in turn developed by characterizing objects using different phenomenologies. Of course, all of this stands upon the foundation of sensor data, such as the exquisite capabilities here at Maui that detect and track objects. I had the good fortune of going up to the site yesterday. I say good fortune because, it's a little bit of a squiggly road if you've been up that path, and it's a commitment of a day to go up. But it is an example of the amazing advantage that we have in the technology that we can bring to bear on this issue. Now, ideally, all of this needs to be done in near real time. For some would imagine about 100,000 objects spanning 70 trillion cubic miles of space with all conjunction analysis. I cannot imagine a grander vision and a more apt challenge for the nation and for the world. But I can also barely imagine any similar challenge in informatics. I'm hard-pressed to think of an analogous situation in which the data is so sparse, so ambiguous, and so difficult to interpret, and yet we have so much at stake. The closest informatics analogy I can think of is the Human Genome Project or the project to map the brain. Affordable technical solutions as an enabler, the scale of this challenge might be a little daunting unless we clearly show that we can use innovative approaches that make this affordable. We need to redouble our efforts to let people know about the innovative approaches that are already being used in this area. We also need to be more proactive and less reactive in developing solutions. That is, less focused on fixing known problems and more focused on preventing them. The advantage of traditional acquisition processes might not be available in this circumstance. It would be great to design the system as a whole to produce a particular result that you need. However, as you know, in this case, there are a variety of budgetary and political constraints that will not likely lead to this circumstance. The process of developing architectures and standards is a social process and a collaborative one that involves complex and subtle technical issues. Additionally, because of the nature of the problem in this case, the collaboration will likely involve many agencies of the U.S. government, international agencies, foreign governments, and commercial companies. If you're going to do this, you really need to embrace it. You have to work out roles and responsibilities carefully, and this requires a vision for an integrated capability and strong leadership. So we have to look for other, more innovative means to accomplish this, and we're already doing that. But people should know that. We can process and share available data better, and we are laying the groundwork for doing that. We can repurpose existing equipment, and we are doing just that. And we can phase the transitions to achieve the end state that is reflective of and consistent with the policy. However, ultimately, we are limited by the physics of the situation, and we're going to need sensors that can do the job at hand. Some of the things that need to be done are costly. Sensors, large-scale informatic systems, and new algorithms and phenomenologies. So the creative people working this problem have noticed this and have started to develop open architectures and standards. This way, systems can be gradually and continuously updated. This is the only rational approach if you want to make systems work together when they are not originally designed as pieces of an integrated system. I hope you would agree that this is a great strategy, but this in itself is a very big undertaking. Another possible way to reduce costs is through information sharing, which may also help improve the resiliency of our systems. But sometimes the hard stuff is, in fact, the soft stuff. You have to work some extremely complex data sharing issues, and some of these are policy-driven. In some cases, data is available that we can't use for a variety of reasons. Either it can't be shared due to a lack of agreements, or it can't be integrated technically. But when you have a problem that is this difficult, you need to press forward with everything that you can. We need more information from cooperative partners, and we need to be able to overcome technical challenges to integrate it and make good use of it. These kinds of issues are hard enough to work within my own company, so I know that the problem is very difficult. But cooperation, if it can be achieved, would go a long way towards showing everyone that we are not trying to solve the whole problem by ourselves or only for ourselves. So I wanted to take a moment to share some of the things in areas where aerospace is directly trying to make a contribution to help on this path. There's some noteworthy accomplishments that I think some of you may be aware of, but some of you may not. So as part of each flight readiness review prior to launch, an assessment of the possibility of the launch vehicle or spacecraft being hit by debris is done. This is what we call our launch COLAs, collision avoidance. And in some cases, this results in launch windows that are as small as a few minutes or less. These short windows are very problematic if any problems have to be worked. And I was just fortunate enough to attend the launch of the NOL 65 out of Vandenberg. And I will tell you, the last few minutes, as we were getting to the T0, we were listening to resolutions of anomalies on the anomaly channels and, taking the go pole on the primary channel all at the same time. And, there are a few people in the room with white knuckles because, you'd like to get finished with the anomaly channel before you get to T0, and sometimes that's a little bit tough. So these short windows are very problematic if we have to work problems, and it can result in long and expensive delays. It costs us a lot of money if we have to stand down. We've developed methods that can extend the launch window to more reasonable times, but this depends entirely on extracting more information from available data in order to increase confidence. Again, better data is always helpful, and it has a direct economic and mission benefit. In addition, a space debris assessment report is provided to address the launch vehicle debris that is left in orbit as a result of the launch. We help identify orbits that will mitigate the effects of the debris, and we assess what happens when it re-enters. However, most people don't realize that a fair fraction of what re-enters hits the Earth intact. So we're studying what actually happens to re-entering objects so that this process can be made safer especially for large objects like the UR's platform, or potentially even the space station in the future. To study the problem, our engineers came up with a device called the REBR, a Reentry Breakup Recorder. It's about the size of a basketball, and it's hosted inside the supply modules that go to the International Space Station. When these supply modules are released from the station, they begin to break apart in the atmosphere, and the REBR instrument records temperatures, accelerations, and then phones home to us at Aerospace using the Iridium telephone system. This is a very innovative approach to getting some much-needed data. There's a lot that we don't understand yet. I mentioned that we have to be able to tell the difference between space weather effects and other effects if we are to really know what is going on in space. We recently built some instruments for NASA's Radiation Belt Storm Probes, the RBSP mission, which are currently studying the radiation belts and producing new information. It turns out that we still have much to learn about the radiation environment. This new understanding will have important practical applications in the areas of spacecraft operations, design, mission planning, and astronaut safety. Lastly, I'd like to quickly address some practical near-term issues. No matter what happens with the budget, we'll need to transition smoothly to whatever comes next. We have to operate in a very constrained and congested environment for a while. In this circumstance, we have to decide carefully what we can track and what we can protect, and be mindful and communicate clearly about what we are not going to track. The Space Catalog is the key tool that enables this. Just to illustrate what I'm talking about, there are roughly 22,000 items in the catalog, with approximately 16 to 17,000 in near-Earth orbit. About 20% of these are only tracked by one sensor. So if you make changes to the operations of the sensors or the analysis process, those changes can have very complicated effects on your ability to track what you want to track. In those cases where an object has not been tracked for 30 days, it goes on the so-called lost list. And this list can grow to represent 20 to 25% of the objects in the near-Earth catalog. So you really have to be careful about making changes. You have to view the whole system from the point of view of its ultimate effect on operations and recognize that the devil is in the details. If we can understand and be mindful of how the system works, it will have the dual benefit of concentrating our available resources to best effect and also provide a tool that can be used to communicate about what we can't do and what the effects of that might be. Here again, a clear and effective policy on how to handle data of varying levels of uncertainty is crucial. If you spend available resources analyzing something that is ultimately unactionable, you may miss something that was actionable. Working on good policies with respect to the use and maintenance of the catalog may be very productive in the near term. It may also be the case that budget pressures get worse before it gets better. I'm not predicting, I don't have a clear crystal ball here, but I don't think that we're all actually through the other side of that issue just yet. In that case, we need to be able to explain, quantify the effect of our budget reductions. That will require an even stronger ability to view the system as a whole and communicate those things that won't get done. Aerospace is working on ideas for mitigating these kinds of problems in the face of the budget reductions that we face, and we know that people at Space Command and elsewhere are also engaged. But we as a community are going to have to redouble our efforts. Ultimately, we can't lose sight of the fact that information is good when it is actionable, which means being of both high quality and complete. Effective policies are going to be enabled by good information. This is first and foremost a technical issue. You can share the information widely and quickly, but if it's fuzzy data, its value is diminished. To get people to understand this, I think will require some very compelling and down-to-earth stories about what we stand to gain and what we stand to lose. The reason I point this out is that I think that people might be more accepting of committing resources to this problem if they understand that it is a grand challenge for the nation, which will result in better relations between nations, better understanding of our environment, and better protection of national and economic interests. The idea that we need to keep track of junk in space just doesn't sound quite as exciting, but it is unquestionably very important. As people understand how far away we are from our objective and how technically challenging this is, they will also understand the need to ensure that our SSA capabilities are the best that they can be. Let me finish with a couple of quotes that are in the National Space Policy that I think express the vision and the purpose of what we're trying to do. In 1958, President Eisenhower said, "More than by any other imaginative concept, the mind of man is aroused by the thought of exploring the mysteries of outer space. Through such exploration, man hopes to broaden his horizons, add to his knowledge, improve his way of living on Earth." 50 years later, President Obama said, "That in fulfilling the task of working and learning in space, we will not only extend humanity's reach in space, we will strengthen America's leadership here on Earth." Again, I'd like to thank the organizers of this conference for inviting me today. I'd like to applaud your efforts in outreach in STEM, because I think that making sure that our young folks are well educated in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and encouraged to pursue careers in the STEM career fields is exactly the right way to approach making sure that we are successful in the future. I wish you all continued success and in the important work that you do, and I'm confident that you're going to have some great discussions here as you continue to enjoy the conference. Thank you.